Welcome back to the REST API series. Next, let's talk about authentication. There are multiple ways to authenticate our REST API routes. For example, for a GET request, we do not need to authenticate the user, as the user can simply read the data. However, if you are going to use POST, PUT, or DELETE requests to your site via the WordPress REST API, you need to authenticate the user. This ensures that unauthorized users cannot make changes to your site. Authentication is required for requests that modify data on the site. Let's discuss the different ways to authenticate a user's request. First, there is cookie-based authentication, which helps determine whether the user is logged in, as WordPress uses cookies to manage the user's login state. This cookie-based authentication is widely used by the block editor because it depends on the REST API to perform CRUD operations, updating and fetching data, as well as saving metadata and other information. The block editor uses this cookie authentication along with nonce to authenticate REST API requests for CRUD operations. Okay, cookie authentication is one of the options, but there are other options as well. For example, we can implement our custom OAuth application if required. Additionally, we can use application password-based authentication via plugins, but WordPress core has already introduced application passwords. So, we no longer need to rely on third-party plugins. There are also JSON web tokens available. These are the available methods and plugins we can use. There's also basic authentication, which requires the WordPress username and password. However, basic authentication should be avoided in production environments, as it can pose security risks. In upcoming videos, we will look at a demo using the application password, as it's built into WordPress core. There are also some client libraries available in WordPress. For example, the Backbone JavaScript library can be used to make REST API requests instead of using the fetch method, jQuery objects, or the default JavaScript methods. We can explore this library in detail. Other client libraries are also available for different platforms that can be used for this purpose. That's all about the basic overview of REST API. So far, we've covered all the default endpoints and several other endpoints. From the endpoint reference, you can explore it further. We have multiple references like routes and endpoint information, and you can check out the default available ones. But let's say, in our movie library plugin, we have a movie custom post type and a person custom post type. And there are a few taxonomies we've registered, like career and genre taxonomies. So, what do these endpoints look like, or how can we access our custom post types data using the REST API endpoints? For this, if you go to the plugin, in the post types for the movie, you will find these arguments for the REST API that need to be passed. First, we have the show in REST. If this argument is passed with the value set to true, then the custom post type movie will be available and used in the REST API. You can also customize the REST base and the REST controller class. This is the controller class used to manage the movie post types endpoints. Since it's a custom post type, we can use the default WP REST post controller, which also manages the endpoints for the default post type. If we go here and simply copy the URL, you can replace wp/v2 with movie, and you'll see the list of movie information. Right now, there are only 2 movies, and there's one page. This is the movie endpoint, and all the arguments and parameters that we saw for the default post endpoint will apply here as well. The only difference is that this endpoint is for accessing the custom movie post type. Additionally, we can change the endpoint base. For example, we can change the REST base to something like film. Now, if I update the endpoint to film, you can see it here, and you can also retrieve a single movie post from this endpoint. So we can also change the REST base for our custom post types. Next, let's talk about show in REST. Since WordPress now uses the block editor, which highly depends on the REST API, if you pass this parameter as false for a post type, the block editor will not be shown. Instead, the classic editor will be displayed. Therefore, whenever registering a new post type, make sure to set this parameter to true. Otherwise, you won't be able to take advantage of the block editor. Now let's discuss the REST controller. we can pass our custom controller, which handles everything, such as registering custom routes and more. Similarly, the terms controller works in the same way. You can modify it as per your needs, just like we did for the custom post types. Now, we hope you have a better understanding of the REST API, what it is, and its use cases. After watching this video, you should explore the REST API handbook to dive deeper into the key concept. Explore all the available options, data, and see what the responses look like. You can also go through the different endpoint references. They include examples, schemas, methods, arguments, definitions, and much more. You can find all this information in the handbook. The context also matters, and you'll learn more about it when you start modifying responses or adding custom endpoints. The context helps identify whether the current request is for viewing purposes or editing purposes. You will find all examples, arguments, and definitions for different endpoints available in WordPress code. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Jai WordPress.